Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I want to share with you the projects and hands-on activities for the third grade related to the Waldorf curriculum by Live Education. So this video is part of a series of videos, and if you'd like to see some of the other ones in the third grade playlist, you can tap on the screen right now. There's also a link down in the description box below. In other videos, I show you our main lesson books from the third grade, the supplies that you'll need for third grade, as well as books and resources for the third grade year. Okay, so today we're going to go through the hands-on projects. I'm going to show you some of the things that we've done in the past, as well as some of the materials that you might need in order to do some of these handwork projects that you'll find in the curriculum. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you the different main lesson books for the third year. So the curriculum, as you can see, is quite small. This one is by Live Education. It comes with 6 of these books, which will make up your main lesson blocks for the year. You have a history block on the myths of Akkad and Sumer, and we did a lot of watercolors for this one, as was suggested in the main lesson book. There's also a block on literature, grammar, spelling, and word families, and this one happens to be one that you can run parallel with another main lesson block, as these lessons can be short and repetitive and work throughout probably the whole entire year. We have another history block, 2 of them on Hebrew myths and culture. You have creation and patriarchs and prophets and kings. One of these has mostly lessons for the main lesson block, and then the other one has some festival ideas, celebrations, music, cooking, the Hebrew alphabet, and some form drawing, as well as some additional lessons. The math block for this year is time, weight, measure, and money, the math of practical life. This is going to go through linear measurement, time, and money, as well as continue with the 4 basic math operations. It's just going to get a little bit more complicated with those 4 operations as they have been previously introduced in the first grade. You also want to keep up with your daily math and your mental math. Humanity on Earth, Shelter, Clothing, and Farming. This is where you're going to find a lot of the handwork projects. You're going to find a lot of projects in general for either this main lesson block, or what you can do is you can stretch this over the entire year and do one of your other main lesson blocks in the morning and then work on these activities in the afternoon, since they lend themselves really well to afternoon work. You have some shelter building, and you have some farming, and of course you have clothing, and at the back of the book there are a lot of ideas on different kinds of handwork projects you can do. All right, so let me put these aside and take you through some of the projects you're going to find in third grade that aren't necessarily handwork projects, but things that you'll want to consider stocking up on before you embark on the main lesson block on farming and shelter building and clothing. So for farming, and I just have a really simple product here to show you. This is by Nature Watch, and this happens to be an herb garden greenhouse, and it comes with all the materials that you need, and then you grow these different herbs, and then you can transplant them into your yard, or you can just take the lid off once they get tall enough and then just use them in your cooking. So it's another great way to add a project that you would do in one part of the curriculum for another project that you would do later, which would be the cooking. That could be in your history part of the curriculum, or if you're growing grains like wheat or corn, then you can use that with part of your farming block. And I think that it's fantastic to go from start to finish with a project like that, where you're growing it from seed and then you're harvesting it, and then you're actually making the bread out of the things that you grew. It's fantastic. It requires patience and observation and many days, weeks, and months in order to complete a project like that, which is really different in our modern day fast-paced world, where having that kind of patience to see a project through like that is kind of unusual, and so I think it works really well with the third grade student. So I have this project here from Nature Watch. You can also just get some pots and seeds, or just grow them in your backyard. We also have this mix of seeds that we use to make sprouts. You can also just put these in the garden and let them grow. You can get creative with how you decide to do your farming and garden work. You can do it in as small of a space as just this little greenhouse if all you have is a windowsill, and if you have a backyard or if you have acreage, then you can get a lot more creative with your farming. So in addition to farming, another great activity would be to go visit a farm, or milk goats, or collect eggs, or even raise chickens. Those activities would really round out the main lesson block on farming. All right, so let me show you some of the projects related to shelter building. All right, so the main lesson book goes through some ideas on what you can do for building different projects, from Noah's Ark to simple backyard shelters, and even this shelter here, which we did several years ago. This one required a little bit of preparation. You do need to get some materials from the hardware store. It was simple to build, but my 9-year-old wasn't able to do it as well, and so my 12-year-old did most of the work, and my 9-year-old was just not quite skilled enough to do this project, but this was another great one to do as well. And then there are other shelters in here as well, and so the backyard shelters are pretty simple to make, and so are the tents, which if you have a couple of dowels or sticks, you can easily make a teepee. So we do have our teepee that we don't just use for 3rd grade, we just use it often as just something that the kids can pretend play with. But I want to show you some of these other shelters in here that if you don't have the opportunity to make these in child scale or full scale, you can always do them on a small scale. So this is a yurt that we actually did when we were doing our Middle Ages unit, and so it's a small scale model, which I think works just as well. We also had some wool here that needs to be felted down a little bit more to make the top, but then you can see that you can easily make a small model of some of these shelters. And then something else that we also had during our Middle Ages unit was a castle building kit that came with this mold. And so we were able to make our own little bricks, and then you can do a little brick house. We did use these bricks in order to do castle building, but you can also, we started here to make a little house, and that's the chimney, and this is the outside of the house. And so you can use the same, it's not a mold, it's a cast, right? I always get the names mixed up. But you could use the same cast in order to make blocks to make like a little brick house. You just need some plaster of Paris for this. And then if you wanted to, you could also use your Lincoln logs to make a log cabin. So there's multiple opportunities for you to make these little shelters on the small scale. Something that we got recently for our Native American unit would also work really well with this unit. I also want to show you some of the projects and activities that we have for our Native American unit study, because I think a lot of these handwork projects would work really well with this particular main lesson block. And so here's like a small model of a teepee. So again, if you didn't want to buy the materials to make a full-size teepee, then you could certainly use one of these. It was really affordably priced, and this is from Rainbow Resource. Some other projects that I think would work really well for this year, especially since they are practical and they're decorative, are these leather making kits. This one is for a headband, and you could also even do some stitching, which would work well with that part of the curriculum too, the hand stitching. And then this one is a little pouch or a little wallet, and again, it uses the stitching and it's something that's practical, so I think it works really well for this unit. I want to show you 2 more things that we've had in our homeschool collection for a long time that would work really well for this unit, and this first one is a fire drill. This is an Indian fire drill, and this would work really well because again, these are the practical skills that you need. So you learn how to make a fire, you have your shelter, you can farm, you can make your clothes, and it really gives the student a sense of purpose and comfort and ownership and a little bit of control in an otherwise chaotic period of time in his or her life. All right, so that's the fire drill. You can also do basket weaving. I really like these kits that are from Acorn Naturalist. There are a variety of kits depending on the age level from I think 8 to 12 years old. They come with all the materials that you need in order to make these beautiful pine needle baskets. We have found some pine needles in our area that happen to be long and suitable for making pine needle baskets. So now that we have the basic instructions, we can just go ahead and use the pine needles that we have in our area. I believe it came with the needle as well as the raffia, and then you can see here, this is one of the projects that we started. All right, so the last thing I want to show you are just some things to have on hand for the students to do projects that are practical, that would relate to some of the other handwork projects that I've shown you. And one of them is just having a lot of rope. So having rope means that they can start to create some of their own shelters with some basic materials that they're finding in nature, and use the rope and the fabric that they have in order to make tents or covers for their shelters. Also, working with different kinds of knots is going to be really great for this age and beyond it. Third grade might be a little bit young for doing different kinds of knots, but certainly as the children get older, this is going to be a great skill to have as well. All right, so I think that rounds out most of the activities and projects that you can expect in the third grade year. Don't forget that you can see the other videos in this third grade series by tapping on the screen. And if you want to see what we're up to on a daily basis, don't forget that you can find us on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.